Hello viewers, thank you for tuning in. So today, tuning in, clicking the link, whatever, however you got here, thank you for getting here. Today we've got an interesting watch for you. A watch I've just acquired, just added to the collection. It is my first of the big three, Holy Trinity, and it's a Vacheron. So it's a Vacheron Constantin Phidias, not hideous, Phidias. Apparently this Phidias person was a Greek sculptor, and obviously with that name, Vacheron were trying to make a big statement around the aesthetics of this watch. So for me, it's very much a Marmite watch. So some of you will look at this and think, God, it's a bit hideous. I think it's fantastic. Now, let me just talk through some of the reasons why I think this was a great purchase and probably the best one I've made in 12 months or so. This is a big three name, as I've said. Precious metal, limited production numbers, very important watch in the history of Vacheron, and it's got some amazing design cues like the integrated bracelet, which is just having such a big resurgence at the moment with the 222. So perhaps I'll take a couple of those in turn and just talk through a little bit more in depth. So the history on this particular one, Vacheron at the time had gone through new ownership in the late 80s. I think the 80s have been a difficult time for Vacheron. We had the Genta Royal Oaks just flying off the shelves at Audemars. We had the success of both the complications and the sport watches in Patek. I think Vacheron was probably, the lowest rung of those three watchmakers at the time. The 222 wasn't particularly successful when it was launched in the 70s. The 333 wasn't much more successful, actually less of a success. And then we had the Phidias. So it literally is the predecessor of the offshore, because the offshore came next. The first generation offshore came after this Phidias, and it's a direct descendant from that 222, that George Heisek designed watch with the integrated bracelet, that fantastic hexagonal linkage piece between it all, and it very much sits within the kind of same echelon as the 222 in the sense that it is a sporty dress watch, and I think that's exactly where it sits today. It's not a sports watch. It has some cues of a sports watch. It's got a tachymeter around the edge. It's got the chronograph function with the date, but that to me just means it's useful. It's incredibly thin, about 10 millimeters, and it's 35.5 mil in terms of the size of the case. So a really nice dimensions for someone with a slightly smaller wrist. For those bigger wristed amongst us, you might find it a bit too small. However, although it's small, I've brought along a stablemate to compare, and we've put these on the scale, on just some kitchen scales. And the President came out at about 134, 133, couldn't quite make his mind up, grams. And the Vacheron came out at 128 grams. So incredibly close in terms of the weight on these two watches. Although it's small, the Vacheron is still a hefty piece. There's still a substantial amount of gold on this watch. And it wears so beautifully because of the way that the bracelet is made. It's got this kind of middle link in between each larger link, so the fit on the wrist is just fantastic. Some of the other design keys around this, the chronograph function, absolutely love. The movement that sits behind this watch is FPK 1185, so also found with the Blancpain split second watches. All their chronographs use this as a base movement, as well, of course, as the Royal Oaks. The Royal Oak chronographs all use this movement too as base movements. So Vacheron were very much taking a high-end movement, adding their own finishing onto it, and it beats at 21.6 kilohertz. So you've not got that high beat frequency of an El Primero, which is probably a good thing in many ways. You've also got a date, which I absolutely love. If anyone's seen my Daytona review, you'll know that the lack of a date really irks me on a watch like that. I think for me, the The iconic things about this particular watch are also the integrated bracelet. If we think about, you know, the 222 and the resurgence reissue of that particular watch now, that bracelet is just that's the focal point of that watch for me, and it's no different on this Phidias. This bracelet is absolutely sublime. The finishing on it, the polishing through the middle, the design that just kind of flows throughout the whole of the watch around this kind of use of curves to smooth the whole aesthetic. I think it just works so well. This watch is also pretty rare, so it's probably fair to say that Vacheron were, you know, going through a bit of a difficult time in the late 80s, and there was quite a bit riding on this Phidias model, and I'm not sure it really performed as well as they hoped it would. This is the solid gold version. There are a couple of different dial variants. You've got this is kind of like a champagne dial, similar to my Day Date. They have a white dial version as well, and they have a couple of different tachometer options. This is unfilled. Some of them I've seen where they've got a black filling. All in all, across all those different variants, the solid gold chronographs were between 400 and 500 pieces produced. So it's a rare piece, and this is number 130 of those, so it puts it kind of early-ish in the run. So we've got a few things on the side of this one. Scarcity, great maker, solid movement, design cues that we can see throughout the 222 and obviously through some of the higher end pieces and the Royal Oak, various Pateks and things like that. How much did I pay for it? I think you'd be surprised when I tell you. £9,000. When you think that a Rolex Day Date is coming in about £12,000 here in the UK, to think that you can get something like this Vacheron from a fantastic maker, all of the fantastic design cues that we've talked about, great movement, with bid history, limited production run, for £9,000, that's Submariner money. Right, really makes you think. In terms of some drawbacks, it's quite a small watch. So it's 35.5mm width, it's about 10mm thick. I think that suits its design objectives perfectly. If we look at the design objective as being something where it wants to be on the sporty side of dressy, that size works really well because you've got a big bracelet, it's fairly heavy, and you know, when you start to get above that in terms of size, it starts to lose some of the delicacy of the watch, I think. So it's bang on in terms of size, but it might be too small for some of you with bigger wrists. I think the design really splits opinion. I love it, but others don't. Others think it's it hasn't aged well, it's kind of too retro. I think it's great. Interested in your comments. There might be some concern about the delicacy of the movement as well. Some people suggest that the Royal Oak chronographs, they don't put up with the abuse of the Daytonas. So because it's the same base FPK movement, maybe there's some delicacy there. Obviously it's not waterproof anymore. So if you're using this to go jet skiing in the south of France, try to choose something else. All in all, I think a really interesting watch. And it just proves that there are watches out there that have great history. I'd never seen this watch before. I'd never even heard of it. Still relatively affordable. I know it's a lot of money, but when you compare it against some of the rivals based on those kind of design characteristics, I think it's compelling. Thank you very much for listening. Really interested in your comments on this watch, so please do let me know if you've got any questions or if you love it or hate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.